Hello my beautiful people. Thank you so much for giving my last video on NewJeans so much love. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the video as much as I did making it. I hope this channel continues to keep growing because I'm learning something new every single time I upload new content. This video has been a long time coming. I actually had thoughts about making this video even before I created the channel, but I was scared about how other armies would think as it is a pretty controversial topic. It's been a while since I've done a BTS commentary piece, and I figured I'd do one now. Disclaimer, I believe in nuances in a fair public forum. This isn't going to be a clearly black and white topic, so there might be opinions that may ruffle some feathers. I hope people will be cordial with it, because if you're not, I'm not afraid to block people if y'all harass me. Now that we got that out of the way, let's ask ourselves, did BTS sell out? The answer, like my love life, it's complicated. I feel like the topic of BTS selling out has been around for quite some time now, ever since they have ventured into the US in 2017. I remember when DNA out of all songs was like the song that everyone started to be like, ooh, BTS has sold out to American audiences because it was ridiculously poppy and catchy. It was hilarious to look back in retrospect as the boys were still writing their own music and everyone involved in the production were still on their team. Now one would ask, how can the DNA era possibly be a moment where BTS are selling out? Well, at the time, BTS had won big awards back at home after a couple years of controversy and scandals, and were the first Korean group to be nominated for Top Social Artist at the Billboard Music Awards, which for many, that was the point. They were starting to get noticed by US audiences. In reality, it was the start of their worldwide success, and the fact that BTS isn't just popular in Korea. Of course, this topic kept lingering on and on for the next few years, and well, every year until the present day. It's almost as if someone was trying to throw everything at the wall to see what sticks, all the while not entirely addressing what actually constitutes as selling out. According to dictionary.com, a sellout is a person who compromises their personal values, integrity, talent, etc. for money and personal advancement. An example would be a political candidate who sacrificed their beliefs about LGBTQ rights to have someone on their team who's homophobic in order to gain more votes. With that definition laid out, at what point would one say BTS compromised their personal values, integrity, and talent for money and personal advancement? I think it's safe to say that a lot, and I mean a lot, of people have mixed opinions about the trio that is Dynamite, Butter, and especially Permission to Dance. For the sake of brevity, I will call Permission to Dance PTD. While other times BTS has been called sellouts came from being referenced by the popular success, I feel like these English songs felt like more of a betrayal to more critical and even former ARMY. After all, didn't Namjoon say they would never make English songs? Let's revisit that. So in 2017, BTS were on the Ryan Seacrest show to promote their song DNA and make their first televised debut at the American Music Awards that year. A caller called in and asked why they couldn't make English music. Here's the full unedited conversation that took place.
So while I was editing this, it turns out that this video is copyrighted, so I unfortunately can't share the full unedited video, but feel free to look into the description to see the full conversation that took place.
We produced the whole album in English?
Yeah.
That's the question?
Now, this clip was so hilarious looking back in retrospect because Namjoon clearly looked so done with the question, but I remember being very against the concept of English songs because, well, BTS was and still is a Korean group. As an Asian American woman, I felt attached to the boys because they're unapologetically Asian and explore Korean childhood and young adulthood pretty well. While there's nothing wrong about singing in English, I feel like context would be lost if it wasn't articulated well because the members don't speak English and it would dilute the music. While most reference this particular exchange as Namjoon completely saying no to English albums only, an exchange that you can tell he did not explicitly say no, but rather not warm to the idea, there was also an Entertainment Weekly profile on the group in 2019 where Namjoon quite literally doubled down on not doing any English music for the group. He said, quote, "I don't want to compare, but I think it's even harder as an Asian group. A Hot 100 and Grammy nomination, these are our goals. but they're just goals. We don't want to change our identity or our genuineness to get that number one. Like, if we sing suddenly in full English and change all of these other things, then it's not BTS. We'll do everything, we'll try, but if we couldn't get number one or number five, that's okay, end quote. Now, obviously, BTS did end up having some songs in English, and one would think, wow, they totally lied to us. Not entirely. In 2021, after the release of PTD, Billboard did a profile story on BTS in which they looked into the background on how these English singles came to be, and it's something that shocked me while I was doing research for this essay. Here is an excerpt. But all the members say they didn't all agree that English was a good idea. Both BTS and HYBE executives declined to elaborate, and Big Hit Music's Shin says all discussions were amicable. I think it's a testament to the band's strengths, the way they come to a friendly resolution and be mindful of the company's needs, he says. RM wasn't fond of the idea, though he acknowledges it as a crucial way to keep buzz alive during the pandemic. There was no other alternative, he says, end quote. A closer analysis by Vox revealed the intentions of Dynamite, and yes, it's exactly what you think it was. They were pandering. Obviously, K-pop before the pandemic had a lot of ways to go in order to have someone in K-pop consistently charting on the Hot 100. They may occasionally chart on the top 100 or the top 50, but there wasn't anybody who was charting number one consistently until Dynamite dropped. Upon first look, Dynamite's lyrics were almost the exact opposite of what BTS stands for, as it is filled with American symbolism with not that much rhyme or reason. It would make sense, as BTS did not write the lyrics or produce it, which is a very odd and rare thing to have. The song was written by UK producer David Stewart and Jessica Ogambar, and was pitched to Ron Perry, the head of Columbia, BTS's then American label. This came after years and years of BTS making really good songs that clearly appeals to the charts with popular sounds like Boy With Love and DNA, both of which didn't get enough radio airtime. As of 2023, Billboard still counts radio play pretty heavily, and the American radio DJs have consistently time and time again showed their reluctance in playing BTS's music, mainly due to the group's refusal to sing in English. Their clear annoyance is palpable, as evidenced by some of these videos captured by armies on American radio DJs talking about BTS.
Raptus, BTS won Top Social Artist at the Billboard Music Awards a couple months back. Now they're doing collabos with American artists, and the future looks bright, at least until they exit puberty. And your co-workers interviewed them. How about that? Yeah, that happened. They had more security than the Secret Service. You know, it only makes sense if you played a little bit of the interview right now. Oh, not a bad idea.
I'll just play out of here. I was asking them what cities in America they'd like to see, or they want to see, that you haven't been.
Well, I'm going there.
Denver. I want to go to Denver.
Denver.
And I want to go Six Flags.
Where?
Six Flags, yeah.
Oh god.
I want to ride the roller coaster. Yeah, you know.
Okay, there's a noticeable language barrier. You can't expect the Korean boy band to sound like Bono. Anything else? Wait, listen, Huncho. You know, a talking cat is in your bed trying to explain a Korean boy band to you, and you're like, this is every day. Would you like to scan the radio dial with me? We can go to the country station. They're spending a solid hour talking about their favorite artist has a camo baseball hat. What qualifies as entertainment to you morons?
Hey, go on, no way. No way. Geo Don G Leo, no way.
Was that the English part of it? No way.
Apparently.
Oh,
yeah. No Jesus, no the boy.
What was it?
Geo Neo Jesus, no the boy. Boy with love.
Oh, there it was. Exalted in praise and worship.
That it was over.
That it was over. That we did not have to hear it again.
Oh my God! It's awful. Oh my God!
Yeah, we were jumping around here. All excited that you're giving us some great clips. It had nothing to do with you doing well.
This kind of xenophobia isn't just within radio stations, but national publications as well. Remember the quote I talked about earlier in regards to how they changed their minds about English releases? That same article also asked BTS on how ARMY streams the hell out of these songs and wanted to address the quote-unquote chart manipulation. This was what Namjoon said, quote, "But if there is a conversation inside Billboard about what being number one should represent, then it's up to them to change the rules and make streaming way more on the ranking. Slamming us or our fans for getting number one with physical sales and downloads, I don't know if that's right. It just feels like we're easy targets because we're a boy band, a K-pop act, and we have this high fan loyalty."
We're just here to have a good time with the armies, with the actual people, not AIs, not the robots.
It's true. I feel like a lot of times BTS has got this big chip on their shoulder on the accusations of manipulating their ways to success, which is not only minimizing the work they've done, but also rooted in some racism in the global market. Surely they're not new to the conversation, as this happened during their Wings and Young Forever eras in Korea, but that was over the fact that companies couldn't be able to understand why a small label group could be so successful, not overt racism. Because, oh my god, how could they possibly be so popular? How can this big group from South Korea, filled with Koreans, be so popular around the world? Well, they are, from hard work. But hard work had to be recognized, and sacrifices had to be made. As much as I personally am not a huge fan of the English releases, it did pander to more people. Maybe people who aren't as welcoming with the Korean music at first, but would be okay with listening to some fun little English bop like Dynamite or Butter or PTD to ease them into it. This is like our Trojan horse, where we can invite the people in to introduce them to a whole new world that is BTS and K-pop. And honestly, this analysis is what makes me feel a little less shitty about the American releases. It was a business move that needed to be done apparently in the eyes of Columbia because, well, they haven't done much shit since they signed BTS to the label for the other releases. At least Columbia could be a part of this project and get radio DJs to finally play some fucking BTS. What the problem becomes though is that there are armies who aren't used to the highly political stances and music that these boys have through these songs, only to be shocked and surprised when Yoongi or Namjoon deliver some spicy takes. Now, everyone wants to talk about Western validation, and the thing is, how can that be possible? Western validation would mean that the music is entirely supported by Korean cultural norms and traditions. But technically, K-pop was created in the 1990s and has roots in Black music, or specifically Black hip-hop music. Back in the 1970s and 80s, the heads of the big three, Yang Hyun-suk, Park Jin-young, and Lee Soo-man, all went to the club called Moon Night, where the DJ spun Black music for the Black GIs that were stationed nearby in Itaewon. So K-pop is more of a combination of cultures and was influenced greatly by American music, which is why it sounds so much like American pop minus the Korean. With that all in mind, is BTS becoming more white? The answer is no, and let me tell you why. Whenever the topic of is BTS westernized comes up, there's always this rebuttal, or rather the album that refutes this. And I'm not gonna lie, it was getting ridiculous because it became one of those gotcha moments without that many people talking about the album and its significance. First of all, B didn't have that much of a spectacular rollout with concept films and teasers as much as the Wings and Love Yourself era have done, but it has the most involvement from the members, from the visual concepts down to directing the music video themselves. The concept was a lot more stripped down, which I believe is why it has been overlooked the most. For those who don't know, B was an album written for armies during the time of the pandemic, wedged in between the releases of the English singles Dynamite and Butter. The group didn't plan on creating this album at all, as they were about to promote Map of the Soul 7, a new conceptual album, but things fell through as concerts got cancelled left and right as the pandemic went on. Unlike the last few albums where the content is heavy, B ended on happier terms, showing that even a group that's known for their darker concepts can be happy and hopeful, showing the tenacity through it all. I know I met some armies who believed that B wasn't their best album because it strayed away from their normal sound, which honestly I disagree. What makes BTS's discography so amazing to begin with is the fact that there's no limit as to what they can do. While groups can anticipate a certain type of sound sonically, I come into BTS not really knowing what I'm going to get, only to bop along with most discography. While yes, BTS is known for tackling darker subject matter, I don't think this means that BTS can't do happy music because, well, whether we like to believe it or not all artists are tortured and miserable 24/7. It's unhealthy to see them that way, as it is not fair to keep them in a box of misery. Wandering Thoughts is a really great dissection of B, as it's constantly overlooked by both ARMYs and non-fans alike. It really puts into perspective that now we're in 2023 as Chapter 2 BTS has been more frank and honest, in line with the release of B. Call me a delusional person, but I think without B, there would be no Chapter 2 BTS in which these solos would explore all their individual personalities and their strengths. Without B, there wouldn't be a personal and minimalistic introspection piece that is Indigo, or more hopeful pieces like Jack in the Box, or more vulnerable dissections like Face and D-Day. B opened the box for BTS to look inside themselves rather than the society around them, which, to be honest, with them being the most richest people in their home country, they can't really relate to everyday struggles anymore. These are now a part of their past. Now, this doesn't mean that BTS can't talk about systemic injustices. BTS has gone to the White House and the UN respectively to talk about their global message of loving yourself and anti-bullying, donated to causes both privately and publicly, and the members themselves have expressed some political views here and there as well. I mean, how can anyone forget about what Namjoon said in a Spanish newspaper earlier this year? Iconic shit, may I say. I knew you were still in there, bro. It's just hard to speak honestly about your job, let alone being a celebrity, to talk about what kind of stuff you had to sacrifice to be where you are. Especially when there's a lot of people buzzing in your ear about what you could be and what you could represent. One can get exhausted at having to show themselves. I think what's amazing about BTS is now they've opened the door to getting more idols to feel comfortable in speaking out about their experiences, showing that there are more grays in this industry than there are black and whites. With the success of the English singles and the mini tour on their backs, what would BTS do next? Another tour? Another full conceptual album? The possibilities are endless. What about a anthology album? I remember with the news when Proof came out, some folks were excited with the fact that BTS has enough hits on their roster to come out with what seemed like a greatest hits album and the possibility of these songs being presented on tour. But then there were other critical armies who wished for a full album because, after all, it had been 2 years since the last album, and as you guys already know from earlier, the reaction was lukewarm at best in comparison to the success of Map of the Soul 7. Yes, the album would end up presenting 3 new songs along with a slew of demos, but it doesn't have the fanfare of the high conceptual albums like their predecessors. Some even criticized if BTS really ran out of steam, already forgetting how to write and produce. Cue the festive dinner. On June 14th, 2022, BTS released a video where the group had dinner and talked amongst each other about the group activities as a part of their annual week-long festivities called Festa. It was here when the group began to express their true and honest feelings about the work they've been putting out, feeling burnout and exhausted from the amount of work they've been doing for the past few years. As a result, they decided together to go on a temporary group hiatus to focus on their careers, a move that was unprecedented and shocking at the time. For context, BTS has been doing quite literally everything together, with a few members doing solo work on the side but not having any promotions done. So it was strange for the group to be this successful this long to not have solo activities. It was nerve-wracking for both the group and ARMY to be heading into this new chapter called Chapter 2, as it was heading towards uncharted territory to this day. Perhaps what stood out the most was their desire to stay together in 10, 20, or even 30 years out in the future, as noted in the festive video and the subsequent appearances after at award shows and their yet-to-come free concert last October. As we got into solo work, they all echoed the same thoughts and love for the group, and it was evident and clear that they would continue on as a group until all of them returned from military service. After the festive dinner, there were a lot of articles about the video stating that the group would go on hiatus forever or even disband. This kind of news prompted a letter from Namjoon himself, who said it, and how angry he was that he couldn't be honest and real without a bunch of people making assumptions about what happened. I think this is what really captures the question of whether or not BTS sold out in essence. What exactly really constitutes as selling out anyways? It's such a subjective way of looking at things, and most of it comes from the fact that they got extremely popular beyond their expectations. It doesn't really matter how the group feels about their space in the world, and that, as they have said and commented about their solo work, that they still want to create space for others and shine a light about the things that are happening in the world, or be an example for other generations. I think most people forget or don't even bother to look into this and make quick assumptions about think pieces about their musical direction rather than letting them be as who they are genuinely. One last thing that people get up in arms about in regards to them selling out is their desire to win a Grammy. Both Yoongi and Namjoon had said this in the earlier years of their desire to be nominated, and now in 2023 with 5 nominations, it feels as if their dreams have already come true. Based on Yoongi's answers in the LA Times, it's evident and clear that the group doesn't necessarily care anymore, stating that it's more of a logo show more than anything, echoing what Bong Joon-ho said about the Oscars. Namjoon and Yoongi again have said this too at the PTD Vegas shows that happened the week after the Grammys, stating that the entire point there in Vegas was because of ARMYs, not the Grammys.
I know there's a lot of noises out there about our Grammys and the team itself, but you know, why giving a shit about it? We didn't come to Vegas for the Grammys. We came to Vegas for the ARMYs.
People can change their minds over time, and I want to believe that Yoongi and Namjoon have changed theirs the moment they realized what was actually up at the Grammys. A lot of think pieces came out when Dynamite and eventually Butter didn't win, and anybody who has followed the Grammys long enough knows how incredibly racist it is. I mean, the fact that Beyonce, out of all people, can't even win Album of the Year but is the most celebrated Grammy artist in her own urban or whatever the fuck category they stuck her in says a lot about the current industry and how it's put together. And it's okay for BTS to not participate in that as much anymore, but rather focusing on longevity in the future. So, has BTS sold out? I guess it depends on who you talk to. In the end, it's an opinion, and personally, I don't think they did. To me, BTS is just a group that through serendipitous moments were able to achieve a lot of success. Now, we don't know them as people to know their real thoughts, but I would sense that they feel just as conflicted about their success as most famous people do. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to change your mind as evidenced by some of the things that happen in this video, and everyone is okay in changing who they are as people. We're not perfect human beings who are stagnant, but rather the exact opposite. There's a lot of nuances in this conversation that is surely missed, whether it's from someone who's a big fan and defends them to the death, or from someone who could care less about the group. I hope this video would help fill in the void that is missing in the discourse, especially since I haven't seen that many videos post PTD about this topic. If you guys like this video, feel free to subscribe and give it a like. Express your thoughts in regards to BTS and their position now in the comments, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. See ya!